In 1983, a tragic massacre and pogrom unfolded in Sri Lanka, resulting in brutal annihilation of numerous Tamil Hindus and leaving many others injured. 4 decades later, this horrifying event began on July 23, 1983, when a SINHALA mob took to the streets, moving through towns and villages to launch attacks on Tamil individuals. This violence was supported by the ruling government at the time, the UNP, along with the security forces. This dark chapter in history is now referred to as Black July. A friend of mine, Velupillai Devarayan, who witnessed the massacre firsthand, as a Tamil Hindu, shared his harrowing experience. He recounted how he narrowly escaped thanks to his sister-in-law, who was a Muslim. They managed to board a car but was stopped at a roadblock where security agents demanded to know their identities, specifically whether they were Tamil. They conducted a thorough search, and it was the Islamic identity of the sister-in-law that ultimately saved them, allowing them to pass through, while others were not so fortunate. Before attempting to flee, they stood on his brother's balcony and observed neighbors from the SINHALA community gearing up to join the violence. These neighbors assured them loudly from the street that they were not going to be touched. They had nothing to fear and would not be harmed. Why they did not attack as promised? The word were not to be trusted. As reported, most SINHALA people have gone to other places, other villages, to carry out their heinous attack. This report indicated they had gone to other villages to commit similar atrocities. My uncle reasoned that if they could perpetrate such acts elsewhere, there was no guarantee that others who did not know them from SINHALA clan would not come to harm them as well. This is CHOKITABLEmedia reporting what happened 40 years ago in Sri Lanka to those who have ears to hear in other countries where bigotry and tribalism is the order of the day. Tribal Olympics. People are cooking up issues, criticizing other tribes, running other tribe down in order to cause trouble. I hope people will learn from this history of Sri Lanka massacre, the Black July. The event of Black July was not an isolated incident. They marked yet another chapter in the long history of violence against Tamils by aggressive SINHALA mobs. In 1956, the Eastern Province witnessed the tragic loss of more than 150 Tamil lives. Just 2 years later, in 1958, riots erupted, resulting in over 300 fatalities. The violence continued in 1977, shortly after the UNP assumed power, when anti-Tamil riot claimed another 300 lives. By 1981, the situation escalated further, with ruling party MPs overseeing the brutal anti-Tamil riot in Jaffna. Many Tamils clan were killed, raped, and burnt alive. I can remember 2 incidences where a whole family, while trying to escape, were burnt alive in their car. Another was shops and businesses belonging to Tamils were looted and the owner treated in inhumane way before being killed by SINHALA youth. There was an Iranian businessman I cannot forget during this incident for his humanitarian act. His humanitarian action is 100% per excellence. He kept a lot of my people in his fortified mansion, fed them, brought for them everything they needed. He was a good man for saving other people's life. Furthermore, contrary to what many believed, the anti-Tamil violence that erupted in July 1983, often labeled as their Holocaust, was not merely a spontaneous outburst following the ambush of a Sri Lankan army patrol by Tamil guerrillas. According to a report from the International Commission of Jurists, there is a strong indication that this coordinated assault on Tamil community was orchestrated by and directed by extremist faction within the ruling UNP party. The report suggests that the killing of 13 soldiers by Tamil guerrilla were merely the trigger for executing a premeditated plan, with allegations pointing to a cabinet minister involved in the orchestration of this attack. The Black July program in Sri Lanka exhibited all the characteristics of genocide, particularly evidence in the fact that the mob were equipped with voters' registered lists that identified Tamils as their targets. In this horrifying assault on the Tamil community, it is no surprise that the underlying motivation have been simplified into a straightforward cause and effect story, leading to SINHALA mob unleashing their fury the following day, supposedly as a reaction to the death of their fellow Sinhalese. However, the uncomfortable truth is that the program was set in motion long before the LTTE's action became widely known. The event leading up to the program clearly indicated that Black July was not an impulsive eruption of violence against Tamil. Rather, it was a calculated act. This genocide was deeply rooted in a climate of escalation, hostility, and violence that threatened Tamil existence and well-being. Following account outlines months leading to Black July, highlighting the state intentional action or negligence regarding anti-Tamil violence on the island. It's crucial to understand that these accounts do not encompass every event but aim to demonstrate the persuasive and growing state-sponsored violence against Tamil. Black July devastated the Tamil's economic foundation on the island, but simultaneously fostered a thriving global diasporic economy. Instead of quelling the Tamil political movement permanently, it ignited Tamil activism worldwide. Effort to erase Helam Tamil cultural symbol and identity only led to their global recognition. The current situation is deeply intertwined with historical events. The past will shape the future. Without accountability for the mass atrocity committed against the Tamil people, without justice, which is essential for long-lasting peace, and without acknowledgement of Tamils as people with equal rights, not as minority in their homelands, Sri Lanka's northeast will continue to be associated with ethnic conflict. Bringing this to you is to showcase what is happening in other lands that haven't witnessed this. Ethnic bigots should be done away with. Ethnic championship should be done away with. Ethnic jingoism should be done away with. Care must be taken in our utterances and the way we treat our fellow human being. Before you act, before you perpetrated the same thing that happened in other land, think about Black July in Sri Lanka. Let's listen to the report collected together by Al Jazeera to be able to understand more what human beings do with each other, our tendency to commit serious atrocity against each other. Think about what is happening right now in Bangladesh, where minorities and places of worship of minorities are being targeted. People are being killed because in this story of Black July, you can see the hand of the security forces in there, the hand of the political party in there, and the hand of the security forces in there. The hand of the security forces that's supposed to keep peace, helping also in massacring their own people. Let us watch Al Jazeera.
Ambika Satkunanathan was 9 years old when anti-Tamil violence broke out in July 1983 here in this Colombo suburb.
We were helped over the wall, over a ladder. Also, our grandmother was with us at the time and she couldn't walk properly either. So we were all, we had to jump over the wall into the house behind us because that was a Muslim house. And while we're jumping, we can also hear sounds of chaos.
Her family hid in this house up the road before moving to a refugee camp and then shipped out to Jaffna with hundreds of others. This is what they were hiding from: government-backed mobs hunting down Tamils, using voter lists, torching cars, homes and businesses. On 23rd July, 13 soldiers were killed in Jaffna, where they were stationed to fight an emerging separatist movement. The arrival of their bodies in Colombo for final rites sparked anger and violence that spread throughout Colombo and other parts of the country. Many believe the violence was planned. The International Commission of Jurists said the suspicion is strong that this organized attack on the Tamil population was planned and controlled by extremist elements in the government UNP party. Some reports go as far as to allege that a member of the cabinet was actively involved in planning these attacks. Over 400 Tamils were killed, tens of thousands left homeless, 17 major factories and hundreds of small businesses were destroyed in a week-long marathon of violence and looting. Then President J.R. Jayawardena took 3 days to react. When he did, he threatened to proscribe any organization supporting the division of the country. He did not condemn the violence. That pandering to the country's SINHALA majority was part of the problem.
This is failure to recognize that we are a plural society. We should recognize that and appreciate it. That has become, I think, one of the biggest contributing factors to our downfall.
The riots prompted tens of thousands of Tamils to migrate and led to a major escalation of the 26-year conflict between government troops and Tamil tigers fighting for a separate state.
40 years have passed since the violence when places like this in the heart of Sri Lanka's commercial capital and many others were set ablaze, and thousands of Tamil lives were torn apart. Observers say not much has changed, and Tamils who stayed behind made to feel that they do not belong here. Minel Fernandez, Al Jazeera, Colombo.
Minel Fernandez joins us now from Colombo. So, Minel, given everything you mentioned there in your report, is Black July being marked in any way?
Not in a major way when you see the scale of what happened 40 years ago. I mean, I'm standing, if you notice, just behind me, the buildings, actually the buildings where you saw black thick smoke billowing in my package from archives. But if you look at people around, nobody really, at the moment, is marking the fact that 40 years ago there was complete mayhem on the streets. And even for the Tamils, they've tried to put it behind them and move on. In fact, it was very surprising to me when I was working on this package that very few people wanted to come on camera and speak about their experiences. So there are 1 or 2 art exhibitions, a few events, but on a very low key.
40 years on, what do most victims of the violence want the most?
Well, for many of the victims, I mean, you saw some of the footage in the archives and the newspaper articles. It was just that completely unexpected sort of attack on people, on houses, on homes. Unexpected, you know, they said unwarranted. So these were a lot of the Tamils that faced the violence were outside the north and east. These were people of the plantation communities up in the hill country. These were second, third generation Indian Tamils who had obviously sort of amalgamated into Sri Lankan society, that had come down as businessmen many, many years ago. For many people, you know, this violence which robbed them of everything, all of their possessions, they want justice, at least for people to acknowledge what happened. Only one president in 1994, Chandrika Kumaratunga, acknowledged and apologized for the violence, but by far and large, no one has really addressed what happened and what the root causes were.
And do people feel that today's challenges, many of it, is the legacy of Black July?
Well, you cannot get away from the fact that what happened 40 years ago shaped the direction of this country in terms of not just what happened to the Tamils as a group, as a community, all the different levels of Tamils that it affected. Like I said, the plantation, the Indian Tamils, the Jaffna Tamils, that then went on with that separatist movement under the Tamil Tigers to wage a 26-year war. But obviously, there was degradation, there was poverty in the north and east because of that long-drawn conflict. And Sri Lanka, in terms of its potential, has really been held back by this violence and the legacy of that Black July, as well as other violence.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I hope you've learned one or two things out of this story.